Hello and a very warm welcome to Matchpoint. This is the new show on CCTV Africa that brings you sports news, action, highlights and features from an African perspective. It's great to have you with us tonight. I'm Mahia Mutua. Let's take a look at the highlights for tonight's show. Making the impossible happen, Zimbabwe plans to put in a bid to host the 2034 World Cup. Title decider, will it be Argentina or Germany to lift the 2014 World Cup? And face of determination why Kenya's Rugby Sevens team is training hard. We begin in Zimbabwe in what would be a sensational sporting achievement by a mile if the country follows through with its plans to put in a bid to host the prestigious World Cup. The country's tourism minister Walter Mzembe says he spoke to FIFA boss Sepp Blatter during the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, who reportedly indicated that the country could put in a bid for the 2034 tournament. Farai Mwakutuya has more details from Harare.
Zimbabweans love their football. They've braved the cold weather and stayed up late at night to watch this year's World Cup. But could they be watching their favorite football stars in real life soon? Football fans here are for the idea, but say preparations should begin now.
Now that we've laid down the gauntlet and say, look, we want to host the World Cup in 2034, now we need to come up with a plan. What's the plan to get us there? No problem with dreaming. The issue is trying to come up with a plan to get there.
The question is, do we have the infrastructure? Are we working towards having that infrastructure? Are we putting something into place? Yes, we have got the passion. Yes, we can support, these games and stuff like that. But there would be authorities, are they putting funding into the projects?
The biggest sporting event Zimbabwe has ever hosted was the 1995 All-Africa Games. The country was set to host the 2000 Africa Cup of Nations but had to pull out after the FA failed to secure a government guarantee. In 2010, it put in another unsuccessful bid to host the 2015 tournament. When the tourism minister was asked in Parliament earlier this week about his ambitious plan, he said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Does Zimbabwe have the legs to undertake such a journey, though? Former ZIFA chairperson Leo Mugabe thinks so and responded to critics who say the country should focus on its myriad of economic and social ills first.
If you are not a sports person, you probably don't see the benefit. If you are not an enthusiast for sport, you probably don't see the benefit. If you are not into sports tourism, you probably won't see the benefit. But if you think deeper and look at sports tourism, look at sports persons, children who are in school today, who are playing sport, then there's a lot to be to benefit out of it.
Hosting the World Cup does also offer an added incentive for the national team.
Hosting the World Cup might be the Warriors' only chance to ever play at the World Cup. Do you think we can make it there by ourselves?
To tell the truth, right now, I don't think. I think hosting is the only way the Warriors will actually play.
Hosting a World Cup, though, is no laughing matter. The costs run into billions and dwarf the country's current GDP, which is a mere $4 billion. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, an extraordinary story indeed. Well, for more details on what it would take to host a FIFA World Cup, we're joined live from Sao Paulo by CCTV's Dan Williams. Dan, keeping in mind that tonight is exactly 4 years to the day that South Africa hosted the World Cup finals, and of course you have experience being in Brazil this year and 4 years ago in South Africa. What does it take for Zimbabwe to host, or any other country for that matter, to host the World Cup?
Well, I think first and foremost, as it was touched on there in that piece just now, it cost a staggering amount of money. The best estimate for this World Cup in Brazil is about $11 billion US. It's a huge amount of money to outlay. And of course, Brazil is a top 10 world economy, whereas Zimbabwe is not. So that's the first thing. And we've already seen here in Brazil the number of demonstrators who feel that that money should be better spent on other things, such as schools and hospitals and the like. So that's the first thing. You have to put a big question mark against that. And you also have to kind of wonder, when looking at a bid for football tournaments such as this, what other sporting events the country has hosted. And of course, Zimbabwe, they haven't even hosted an Africa Cup of Nations. So you also have to put another question mark against that. And especially when you then put in the other factor, and that is that they'll be going up against some other major nations which have hosted perhaps big tournaments and big sporting events as well. And you have to really wonder, as much as you've got to admire the vision, that actually Africa as a whole, who would be probably then due another World Cup by that stage, if not before, that actually football authorities in Africa would be better to actually to focus in on another country that would perhaps have a better bet of actually winning the right to host a World Cup, such as Nigeria, which is Africa's biggest economy, and of course has quite a rich football history and World Cup history as well.
All right, Dan, I'll keep you on the line for just a bit, and we'll come back to you in just a moment as we look towards Sunday, where, of course, Argentina and Germany will meet for the 21st time in the most important match in football on Sunday, the 2014 FIFA World Cup final. Argentina are back on the training field just a day after reaching their first final in 24 years. The South Americans reached the finals after beating the Netherlands 4-2 on penalties after the first scoreless semi-final match in the tournament's history. The side hailed the fixture as a dream final, but are expecting a tough match against the polished Germans at the Maracanã Stadium. For their part, Germany were rejecting the tag of favourites going into Sunday's match. They thrashed hosts Brazil 7-1 to reach their 8th World Cup finals. They will have added incentive in the fixture, considering that the last World Cup they won was back when West Germany beat, guess who, Argentina, in 1990.
I cannot guarantee anything. If we become champions come next Sunday, I will have to realize it. Take it on board for a moment. But then the party animal inside me will show up. We'll see.
We are in the finals now. The most important thing is to win. If I can play better, then that's good. But if not, well, it doesn't matter, because the most important thing is to win the championship. This is our dream game. From the beginning, when we were still in Buenos Aires, we had been dreaming about this match. And now it's almost within our reach. Winning this championship is the most important thing for us.
Well, for more on Sunday's final, let's go back to Dan Williams in Sao Paulo. Dan, what's the atmosphere like in Brazil? Obviously, the host nation got knocked out in spectacular fashion, but is there still enthusiasm for the final on Sunday amongst Brazilians there?
Well, I have to say, really here in Brazil, this is a country still very much in shock, haunted by that 7-1 defeat, it has to be said. And of course, they've got this fourth playoff match now, which is a bit of a strange one, isn't it? And you wonder whether they'll really have the heart for this, although there's no doubt they'll be looking to at least try and restore some measure of pride before this tournament is out. And but you just have to say that this is country still very much, as I say, reeling from that defeat. Their sports minister, Aldo Rebelo, has come out and said that that result will leave a deep scar on Brazilian football, on the Brazilian football psyche for many years to come. They're talking about trying to have a massive overhaul of their development and their grassroots training program and coaching programs, which is a bit of a strange one if you think about it, because of course Brazil, it has to be remembered, did get to the semi-finals here, admittedly on home soil, but they are still the world's leading football nation with 5 World Cups, and the amount of talent that continually flies out of this country. So it is a bit of a strange one for Brazil as they build up to this. The coverage is still in every bar and restaurant and on every single TV and every newspaper, but it's definitely taken some shine away.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for that insight. Dan Williams joining us live from Sao Paulo for more on the World Cup. Well, African teams may have exited the World Cup as it entered its 3rd week, but there was still some African representation on the pitch. Referees kept flying the African flag through the quarterfinals, and now Algeria's Jamel Haimoudi has been confirmed as the referee to play the 3rd place playoff. The 43-year-old has officiated 3 matches so far and was even tipped for the final. Haimoudi was named African Referee of the Year in 2013 and has officiated at 3 AFCON tournaments. He becomes the first CAF referee to officiate a third-place match of a FIFA World Cup. Numandias Doué of Cote d'Ivoire and Bakary Gassama of Gambia were the other central referees from the continent at the World Cup. A total of 12 match officials were picked to go to the World Cup from Africa. Well, let's go to the other big African story this week. Nigeria has been suspended from all international football by FIFA amid allegations of government interference in its football federation. The ban means that no Nigerian team, including club sides, can play internationally. Well, we asked you, the fans, what your thoughts were with regards to the ban, and here is a sample of some of your views on our social media page. Bingi M. Mugabe from Uganda doesn't mince his words. He says, so what? After all, football is almost for Europeans. Maximilia N. Tashilani from Nigeria says, it's been long overdue. FIFA should allow us to put our football in order. The FA is bedeviled with corruption. Government gives them the money to run football. They divert it, and you ask the government not to ask questions. That is not fair. Moving on to another, Bolaji Bello Bolibel from Nigeria says, FIFA is very right about the observation, but it seems too harsh. I expect a yellow card before the red card. It will help Nigeria to work stronger. We all say to the Nigerian government to stop politics in football. The next one is James Kenyatta Masaba from Uganda. It's a good lesson to politicians. Football is different from politics. Another one is Bella Mukhtar says, for me, they're right because nobody is above the law. Lastly, I hope the Nigerian sports sector will learn a lesson. Mohammed Satomi is next. Very good suspension, he says. Nigeria, you must obey FIFA law. The last one is from here in Kenya. Collins A. Arturo says, it's not the right way to go about it. That is, of course, what you, the African fans, are saying about Nigeria's suspension. Well, it's now time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, there's more sporting action, including face of determination why Kenya's Rugby Sevens team is training hard. And the final lap, the legal team of Oscar Pistorius rests its case. Welcome back to Matchpoint. Well, barely a week after Kenya's disappointing loss at the Africa Rugby Championships, which cost them a place at next year's World Cup, the Sevens team is hoping to give fans something to smile about with a good performance at this year's Commonwealth Games. Celestine Karone has more.
One final push as the Kenyan Rugby Sevens team steps up its preparations for this year's Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. 5 players from the 15th national team, which recently did duty in Madagascar, are part of the travelling 12.
Well, I think it's going to be this is going to be a challenging. I think next 10 days for us. Arriving in Scotland on Monday, and then also for the guys to expect them to adapt as quickly as possible, especially the guys coming from the 15s, because normally you need about 6 to 8 weeks, to adapt, from 15s to 7s. But we're not going to have that luxury. I think we will have to fine tune and just to tweak our preparation a little bit. I think our trainings are going to be a bit more intense.
Martin Owila, who will be making his 7th debut in Glasgow, was among the 15s team which lost to Zimbabwe in their last game at the Africa Championships on Sunday. The loss meant the team, who are favourites, missed out on a World Cup slot.
Losing in Madagascar was really not the end of it. As we are going to Commonwealth, I think we still have to raise our spirits and the fan base in Kenya.
Kenya's last outing at the Commonwealth Games saw them bow out at the quarter-final stage, and they will be looking to improve this time around.
Once you represent your country, playing for the national team in any sport, you're always going to be under pressure. There's always going to be an expectation to do well and to win. We're going to rub shoulders with some of the best, Kenyan athletes in the world, and I think we need to tap into that mentality. We need to tap into that winning mentality.
Talking about pressure, it's something real. I've experienced it in most of the games, and it's something human when you are new to a system, yeah. And I believe it's. I'll try to be composed. I mean, it's something that I've done thanks to the 15 aside.
For South African True, the Games will offer the team a gauge ahead of their hunt for a place at the Rio 2016 Olympics.
It's important when we started with working with the team, we've set a target, we want to qualify for the Olympics, and obviously, to become a medal contender as well. And I think we've never, almost like lost sight of that goal. And I think the Commonwealth Games is going to be another opportunity for us to move closer to making that goal a reality.
Kenya Sevens will be looking for redemption at the Commonwealth Games after an IRB World Series season which left many of their fans disappointed. And the team will also be hoping to give Kenya its first team sport medal at the Commonwealth Games. Celestine Karone, CCTV in Nairobi.
Well, staying with rugby, and there's a sense of disappointment in the Zimbabwe Sables camp after narrowly failing to make it for automatic qualification to the 2015 IRB World Cup. The team now faces a longer route to qualification, beginning with an away playoff against Russia on August the 2nd. The Sables had a less than ideal run up to the African qualifiers, only going into camp for 10 days and having crucial warm-up games called off at the last minute after major sponsors pulled out. This time around, the country has secured assistance from the rugby mother body. This should give the team a big boost ahead of an encounter against an unknown entity. Zimbabwe has played the bulk of its 15s rugby against African teams, but the technical team is analyzing Russia's recent matches to get a measure of their opponents and plans to travel early to allow the players to acclimatize to what are expected to be difficult conditions.
Looks like they'll support us more than they would have done last week, and we'll travel to Russia a week in advance of the game, and we will actually have our camp in Russia. They're very structured, very set piece orientated, so big scrummaging side, big line out team, and that's their strength, but sometimes it can work with us that we are a little bit more flamboyant. We tend to play with a little bit more less structure and more on individual ability, and we've got that in our team. We've got great game breakers, a lot of good sevens players.
Well, it's taken 4 months. It's seen stops and starts, twists and turns. But last Tuesday, the legal team for former South African Olympic star Oscar Pistorius finally rested its case. Pistorius is accused of murdering his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp in a trial that has captivated a worldwide audience. CCTV's Guy Henderson has been following proceedings from Pretoria.
Just before wrapping up their case here earlier this week, the defence team told the judge that they were unable to persuade some potential witnesses from testifying because they didn't want their voices to be broadcast across the world. But it's not thought that that will make that much difference in this kind of case, because most of the important moments have come from expert witnesses like ballistic experts and pathologists. But right back on day one, back in early March, we did hear some pretty dramatic testimony from one of Pistorius' neighbours.
Net na 3 die oggend het ek wakker geword. My lady, just after 3, I woke up from a woman's terrible screams. I sat upright in bed, and my husband also woke up from the screams.
Now, the defence team later tried to rebut that interpretation of the sound using an acoustics expert. Their argument, of course, is that it was, in fact, Pistorius' screams that could be heard by that neighbour, and it was his turn, indeed, for his version to be tested back in April.
I fired in the direction where I thought the attack was coming from, my lad.
You see, Mr. Pistorius, you now have to give a lot of answers. And you know why, Mr. Pistorius? It's because you know exactly. You fired at Riva. These other versions of yours cannot
It's not
work.
true,
You fired
my lady.
at her. You did. Why are you getting emotional now?
I did not fire at Riva.
Now, after that, it was quite a stop-start process, but according to most South African legal experts, the whole legal process has actually moved quite swiftly by South African standards. The arguments have ended, but the trial isn't quite over yet. We'll hear heads of argument in early August, then possibly another short break before finally, possibly towards the end of August, a verdict. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Pretoria, South Africa.
Let's now take another quick break, but still ahead. The fix for empty stadia while football fans could be making a big comeback in Egypt.
Sports Scene, the heart and soul of sport.
Welcome back. Al Ahly claimed an unprecedented 37th league title as the Egyptian Premier League came to a close this week. The absence of fans at the stadia, however, continues to be a painful characteristic of the league in the North African state. Football authorities plan to return to its normal league format next season, but as Adel Mahrouki reports, some challenges still remain.
Al Ahly fans were a happy lot when the Egyptian Premier League came to an end, as they stamped their dominance on the domestic scene yet again. But not many enjoyed the league this season. For security purposes, fans were still locked out of the stadium. The league was divided into two groups, reducing the number of matches, with more financial burdens falling on the clubs.
No team deserves to take the title of the league without facing all the league's teams. Instead, this year, half of the teams didn't play with each other.
There were no games at all, and for security purposes, the federation insisted on resuming the league with that system. But no country in the world plays with it, and we must follow the international systems to be able to compete. The one-group league creates more competition among the players and gives fans more pleasure.
The Egyptian Football Federation has agreed to heed these calls, with the league set to return to its normal structure next season and fans allowed back to stadiums. The logistics of Al Ahly and Port Said's Al Masri games still remain a point of concern. Their last game is the reason football was disrupted in Egypt for 2 years, when over 70 people died after opposing fans clashed.
We still have a long way to go. Football is not just in a bad shape, it has cancer, so it needs a lot of time to heal. Normal league is just the beginning of the cure.
A return to normalcy at the club level is expected to boost the national team, which has also struggled in the last 5 years. Football experts say that Egypt is taking the steps that would eventually lead to a normal football life. But some of them say that will not necessarily be in the next Premier League. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Well, now, despite it being the most popular sport in the country, South Sudan has achieved little success in football. 3 years after seceding from Sudan, the country hasn't achieved much sports-wise. The country's football still faces problems of inadequate facilities and a lack of skilled labor to steer it to the next level. On top of that, the country has also been rocked by violence. Following the conflict, the country was divided along tribal lines, including the football national team, which ultimately led to a halt in the game. South Sudan still lags behind most countries internationally, but sponsors are slowly trying to change this. Well, now the Seychelles has never qualified for any Africa Cup of Nations championship, but they are hoping that this will soon change. The Islanders have set camp in Uganda to prepare for their second round game against Sierra Leone next week. They are oozing with confidence about the prospects of qualifying to the group stage. Leon Sinyange reports from Kampala.
Carl Hall is well remembered in his home country, Seychelles. The 26-year-old scored a goal that sent his country into the Indian Ocean Island Games finals, known as the Pirates. Seychelles went on to win their first gold at the Games. This month, Carl is hoping to lead his team in an even bigger challenge, a place in the group stages of the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers.
I'm very proud to be participating in a competition like this. African Cup of Nations qualifiers, it's known worldwide. So yeah, like I said, I'm just hoping for a positive result, and hopefully, we can get one.
The Seychelles Islands are 40 places below their opponent Sierra Leone and are ranked a lowly 181st in the world rankings. Not known for their football, the Islanders earned a bye into the second round following the suspension of Gambia from the competition. Having failed in all attempts to qualify, developing a side for the future seems to be the goal.
That is why we enroll in all the big CAF competition, AFCON, Cup of Nations, age group and the 17 and the 20, because you have to go through this avenue before really you can build a team for the future.
Progress from the second round would land the Pirates a slot in the qualification group stage, and before they can get a crack at the Africa Cup of Nations Championships, they must negotiate their way out of Group D that includes African giants Ivory Coast, Cameroon and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
In football there's always the unexpected, and as a smaller team you don't have anything to lose. If you win, you'll be the big winner, but if you lose, you're not the big loser. There's more to learn. It's a win-win situation, even though we try not to get big score, for example, because it might demoralize the process that we are working on.
It takes friendly matches like these for lowly ranked nations to gradually gain the experience of playing at the big stage. The Seychelles are making steady progress on the pitch, and it could only be a matter of time before they realize their dream of playing at the Africa Cup of Nations. Leon Sinyange, CCTV, Kampala.
All right, well, just before we go, let's take a quick look at the upcoming sporting events to look forward to. Tomorrow's World Cup fixtures, a third-place playoff between the hosts Brazil and the Netherlands. The final between Argentina and Germany will be held on Sunday. We also have the two-day IAAF Glasgow Diamond League to look forward to starting tonight. Well, that's it for this edition of Matchpoint. Remember, you can send your feedback to us, matchpoint@cctv.com. You can also visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa. You can also stay in touch on Twitter using the handle @CCTV News Africa. Well, thank you for watching Matchpoint. We leave you now with some images from the sporting highlights this past week.
Il pense à 300 mètres de l'arrivée, Kevin Reza.